Hello my friends, welcome back to the channel. As always, I am Jonathan, your host here at Quickbird Gaming, and I appreciate you tuning in to another episode of Quickbird Unscripted, where I just kind of talk off the cuff about some things I've been thinking about. And today's subject, we're going to talk about GTA 6. Grand Theft Auto 6 the pre-orders have finally started as of today, and the pricing has been announced. And at first glance, they went ahead and did it. They have dropped their regular game price at $80 and the premium at $100. Now, I only want to talk about GTA 6 for a little bit. I really want to talk more about what this is going to mean for the wider industry. Now, as far as GTA 6 goes, I think it's safe to say that this is the most heavily hyped and widely anticipated video game in history. I don't think it's even close at this point. With all the discussion about this and the sheer amount of people who are looking out for it, it is easy to say that this game is going to be a certifiable hit. I've heard people say that it could flop. I don't think that's possible. I think that, if you just look at where Grand Theft Auto sits in the greater scheme of things, GTA 5 is one of the best-selling video games of all time. Red Dead Redemption, also RDR2 specifically, also a Rockstar property, is also one of the best-selling video games of all time. And I want to say that these two are both in the top 5. They're only being beaten out by the likes of Minecraft and Tetris. They are way up there. So I think it's pretty safe to say that this game is going to be a hit. You think about something like Hogwarts Legacy, came out a couple years ago. Harry Potter might be one of the most popular franchises in fiction, in the print fiction. It might be, you could make a case for it being the most widely read fiction series. And Hogwarts Legacy, the game it was based on, sold about 25 million copies, which is like 10 to 20% of what GTA 5 sold. So the hype for GTA 6 is real, and it is really, really, really deep. Now, having said that, I do think that this game is going to be a vast disappointment to a lot of people. Just me personally, I look at the way that Rockstar has gone over the years, and as I talk about some of these things, even though I'm doing this unscripted, I'll try and splice in some screenshots. The Rockstar has done some things over the years that I think have got people questioning if they still have the edge and the cool factor that they used to. For one, about 4 years ago, when they put out one of the editions of GTA 5, I think it was for PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series S, they had cut a bunch of references to people who were trans and making jokes at their expense. And a lot of people kind of took that as a canary in the coal mine moment, where they're saying, look, this is a franchise that makes fun of everybody, and this franchise is edgy. I don't mean in a hipster, we're so cool type of edgy. I mean seriously in a, we are antisocial and we are just going to reflect society, not try and pretend like what it is, what we want to make it type of edgy. And I think a lot of people were nervous about that. And I think that's a bad direction for Rockstar to go in, just because if you look at what might be the nearest analog to the GTA series, which was Saints Row, when the Saints Row game rebooted, or the series rather, rebooted in 2022, many people were put off that game by the fact that the characters had gone from being out over the top kind of criminals, and the action had gone to a bunch of millennial kids worried about student loans and social media. And the reception for that game was so bad that it actually killed Volition. A 30-year studio had to shut down after releasing that game, basically a year, almost to the day after the game released. So I think that is a bad direction for Rockstar to go in. Their identity has always been one of being edgy, of being really kind of not even counterculture, but just kind of making their own making their own statement about culture. But I still think the game is going to sell well. I expect it's going to sell 25 million copies in the first month, maybe more. And if you think if you've got a prediction you want to share, put it in the comments down below. I would love to hear that. You think I'm way off, high or low, that's fine. I don't think this game is going to be a failure. Now, granted, it's probably running up against a $2 billion production train at this point. But, you know, 25 million, I think they're going to sell enough that they'll be all, if they sold 25 million copies, which seems almost a guarantee, I think they'll be all right. But I don't really want to talk too much about GTA 6 because it's not a franchise that I've played real heavily. And it's also not a franchise I will be playing much in the near future, solely because it is going to consoles only first. It's going to PlayStation, going to PC, or to Xbox. It's not coming to PC anytime soon. And anybody who's watched this channel for more than 2 seconds knows that I'm a PC-only player. So this game is not going to be something I would even if I'm interested in it, it's not something I'm going to be able to play. So I'm not too worried about it. No, I'm really more kind of concerned about what's going to happen with the games industry now that somebody has broken the $80 ceiling. Now, some people would say, well, there's been a couple of Nintendo games priced at $80, and I know that. But Nintendo is kind of its own isolated ecosystem. You know, they're only charging for that for first-party games. They're not trying to charge it for third-party games. And they've only done it for a couple of them. And I think the reception has been somewhat mixed. So I don't... Now, I know that Xbox tried to, last year, to walk forward with Outer Worlds 2. They were going to knock that game up to $80. And there was such a back cry, they immediately stepped back to $70. But if I had to make a prediction on this, whoop, trying to lose the phone. It's starting to rain a little bit. If I had to make a prediction on this, I would say that the AAA industry is going to 100% take the wrong message away from Grand Theft Auto's success. They're going to look at the success Grand Theft Auto 6 has. GTA 6 is going to sell millions of copies. They're going to look at that and go, well, that game charged $80 and $100. Why can't we? And I would just look at them and say, I'm sorry, but you're not GTA 6. Just because the most highly anticipated, most successful game in history can get away with something is not the same thing as saying that every game company can, and every game released. Now, yes, I understand that eventually the price will go up to $80 just because of inflation, but it's only been about 6 years since the price went from $60 to $70. And I don't put a whole lot of faith in some of these analysts and stuff who say, well, these games need to go to $100 to save the industry. I'm like, that's not going to save the industry. You know, by economic principles, you're going to, every time you raise the price of an item, you're going to lose a percentage of your buyers because they don't want to pay the higher price. That's just the reality. I'm not sure that the AAA industry can afford to keep shedding its buyers. Now, I've brought this up in previous videos where I said they'll lose 10% because they badly optimize a game, and they'll lose 20% because they refuse to port it, you know, from PlayStation to PC. They'll lose another 10% because of, you know, so-called wokeism and woke issues in their game, which is going to turn off a number of players. You know, you don't have to agree with that, but, you know, not acknowledging that it does make it so some people won't play your game is just accepting reality. And you know, why would you then, with all these other things happening, say, oh, well, we can afford to turn off another 10% because we're going to raise the prices? If you just kind of do the rough math on this, if you're, let's just not say you're a Sony first-party studio or Xbox, and you're just a third-party video game maker, you're EA, you're Ubisoft, you're Capcom, you know, your CDPR, you're making games that go on platforms. You don't have your own platform. When you put your game on Steam or on the PlayStation Store, you're going to be paying 30% of your price to the platform, which means that with $80, you're going to get about $55 per sale. Well, that means if you sell 1 million copies, you're going to make about 55 million. If you sell 5 million copies, you're going to make roughly 275 million. Well, from what I'm seeing, you know, they're saying the average AAA game price has ballooned to $200 to $300 million, which means in order, and that's not counting marketing, that's your development costs. That means in order to make a profit on a game, just to break even, they're saying that most AAA games are going to need to sell 4 to 5 million copies. Now, certainly I understand not every game does this, since, you know, games like Ghost of Yotai from Sony were reportedly produced for about $60 million, although it used a lot of engine and assets, I think, from Ghost of Tsushima. Yeah, a lot of engine, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Optimization and, you know, tailoring. But the games, if games are getting upwards of $200, $300 million to produce, plus then they're marketed, you're now talking about games having to make 4, 5, 6 million sales just to break even. And not every AAA game is going to do that. Not even every AAA game is even going to be close to that. And here's the other rub too. Just flat out, I can tell you right now that they're seeing through surveys and such that not everybody is playing new games. A lot of people aren't buying them. In fact, I read that 62% of players report not buying new games at all. A lot of people wait for, you know, deep discounts on Steam. And why would you, especially considering the number of games that are being produced with the indie scene and everything else, and you backlogs, almost everybody I know that's a gamer has enormous backlogs. Why would you pay $80 for a game when you have games that you can play in your library right now? And if you wait a couple years, odds are that $80 game may be $40 or $50, and it'll be a Game of the Year edition that has all the DLCs included in it at that price, or even less. You know, Witcher 3, game that's 11 years old, you can routinely buy the base game plus the 2 main DLCs for under $15, and that's easily, you know, 150 hours of content. So how many people are going to be willing to pay $80 for a 12-hour game, especially given the fact that games routinely release buggy, they're poorly optimized, they're broken, they're short on content, just on and on and on. And I just don't see that a lot of that number of 62% of players are no longer buying at full price is going to come down anytime soon, especially because the economy, the economy is not magically getting any better. People don't have tons of money. When you have to make a decision between putting food on your table and buying an $80 game, it's a lot easier to justify going out and spending, $10 on Megabonk or even $30 on Windrose than it is to spend $80 on, like I said, on like a 5-hour game or 8-hour game. And you can see this reflected in current trends too. And you can go over to Steam and look at their 2025 player data, their user data. And I know people say, well, GTA is not on Steam. I know it's not going to be for a while, but we're talking about other games, the people that come after this. And the 2025 shows that something like 85% of players are playing games that didn't come out in 2025. And it was roughly split between people playing games that were 1 to 7 years old and games that were 7+ years old. People are playing older games. They're already playing older games. And what do you think is going to happen if the price of new games that may not be reliable are going to start, when the price starts creeping up? Those numbers are going to get even more extreme, which is going to result in even less sales. Because with the price of development going up, and the price of that means that companies absolutely have to sell more games, but they're doing things that are going to make it so they sell less. Raising the price is an automatic guarantee you're going to sell somewhat less in this market. So I'm really just kind of confused as to their thinking. And I know they're thinking, oh, well, they're going to make more money for every sale, but you're going to get less sales. Well, GTA 6 did it. You're not GTA 6. Not everybody can be the biggest kid on the block. And the biggest kid on the block can get away with things that the smaller kids can't. And again, you don't have to like these notions, but it's just the reality. And I think what this is going to do, this move to try and price everything at $80, excuse me a third time. I clearly have been talking too long because I'm getting dry here. I think what this is going to do is this is going to reduce sales. I think ultimately it's going to result in more games failing. It is going to result in further companies having to lay people off or shutter operations because they're not making payroll, because they don't have the revenue for it. It's kind of becoming an accelerating death spiral, I guess. And you know, the sad thing is I think most of us can see this coming a mile away. It's not like this is, you're going to come out of the blue that these game companies are going to start failing because they think they can do what GTA 6 is going to. I would be absolutely stunned if, you know, by 6 months from now, or maybe let's just say 6 months after the GTA 6 launches, if most major AAA publishers are not pricing at $80. And I think it's going to fail. I think it's going to fail them. Especially since right now the only AAA producer that is routinely delivering is Capcom. And even they ratcheted back on Pragmata, their recent release. They ratcheted that, the release price was at $60, not $70, because it was an untested IP. So jumping to $80 across the board for Xbox, for PlayStation, for Ubisoft, and EA, I don't think it's going to work the way they think it's going to work. And you know, like I said earlier, when analysts say, well, we need to go to $100 games to save the industry, it's not going to save the industry. I believe more and more people are just going to retreat into their backlogs and into older games for affordability, if nothing else. Okay. Can't deal with that anymore. And I don't think it's going to be successful. But I do think that's what's going to happen now. A major game, a major product broke the price ceiling, so now we're going to see more of it. And I think it's going to be to their detriment. I think it's going to be to our detriment. And I'm really, it's going to be a mess. But that's what I think about this. It's what I think about. I think it's going to be interesting to watch GTA 6 and watch how it unfolds and how people receive it. It may be that all the changes they're making are not going to make a bit of difference, and people will say that, you know, the lack of edginess is okay because they are just want to get back into that universe. I guess we'll see. You know, like I said, being a PC gamer, I'll be watching from the sidelines. So it's all kind of just theater for me for right now. But let me know what you think. Do you think that $80 games aren't going to make a difference? Do you think players will keep buying them at the same rates? Do you think I'm not making a big enough deal? You think it's going to be even worse? Let me know. As always, if you enjoy this content, please consider liking it. Drop a comment. I really appreciate that. And if you are enjoying it, please consider subscribing. I thank you in advance for that. Anyway, I will be back soon. It's the day after I post this. It'll be almost time for another news video. So we'll be seeing it. I'll try not to waste too much time on GTA 6 and that, because we've already talked about it here. But we'll talk about everything else that's going on in the video game industry. Until then, till I see you next time, thank you for tuning in. You all go out there, live your best lives. Y'all stay gaming.